Hey history fans, Mr. Terry here, and today we're diving deep, like Mariana Trench deep, into the surprisingly bizarre history of dragons. Yes, those fire-breathing, treasure-hoarding, generally unpleasant winged lizards that have been terrorizing our myths and our legends since humans started having myths and legends. You might think that they're just some modern fantasy fad that came from J.R.R. Tolkien's dreams, or just a lead villain for the latest fantasy streaming sensation, but you would be wrong. These magnificent, and let's be honest, terrifying beasts have been slithering through our collective subconscious for millennia. They weren't some random invention. They clawed their way out of the symbolic landscapes of ancient times. And get this, they weren't considered imaginary friends or imaginary enemies. Nope, they were classified right alongside your standard issue livestock and woodland critters. Imagine flipping through your medieval kids book that teaches you about animals. Wolves, caution, may bite. Bears, avoid prolonged eye contact. Dragons, you're screwed. And there's been a level of commitment to a mythical creature that is both utterly crazy and, in a weird way, kind of romantic. Let's dial it back a few thousand years, shall we? Ancient Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, and maybe the earliest depictions of epic dragon drama. I'm talking about Tiamat, the primordial chaos dragon. He goes up against Marduk, the supreme deity of ancient Babylon. And in their epic cosmic battle, the world is created. I'd call this a rough day if you live between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, but if you know ancient Mesopotamia, this might be a typical Tuesday. Fast forward a bit and head east to ancient China. Here, dragons got a serious image upgrade. Forget the chaos monster, these dragons were the heroes. They were revered creatures who controlled the water sources, bringing health, strength, and good luck. They were the opposite of a cosmic threat. Now, hop like hoplites over to ancient Greece, where the mythical creature situation was complicated. You had your garden variety vicious serpents, sure, but then you had the dracontes, these colossal serpent guardians of people, places, and seriously cool artifacts. Think of them as nature's heavily armed security system. But hold on. Because the Greeks also gave us nightmares like the Hydra of Lerna. It had 9 heads and could regenerate when you chopped them off. Hercules had to deal with those as one of his 12 labors, all thanks to a hissy fit tantrum from the goddess Hera. By the way, speaking of Hera, she tried to kill off baby Hercules by sending 2 snakes into his crib. Greek gods are wild. Then the Middle Ages rolled around, and with it, a new religion that needed a new villain. In 313 AD, the Edict of Milan established legal tolerance for Christianity across the Roman Empire, later enabling Emperor Theodosius to make it the official religion of Rome in 380 AD. It was within this context that the dragon of the ancient gradually became co-opted by the new faith. They took one look at those mythical serpents and thought, you know what? This is the perfect metaphor for sin. This can be seen in paintings from the Christian catacombs at Rome and in reliefs found on early Christian sarcophagi. And just like that, the dragon was officially associated with the devil. And the Bible? Oh, it doubled down on the dragon as bad guy narrative. The book of Revelation gives us a 7-headed red dragon that's basically the Hydra from ancient Greece on steroids, knocking stars out of the sky with its tail before getting tossed out of heaven by the archangel Michael. Talk about a dramatic ending. And let's not forget the OG serpent in the book of Genesis, tempting Eve with that forbidden fruit. One bite and bam, original sin. Thanks a lot, snake, or as I like to call snakes, nope ropes. And just to make things extra confusing, those Greek water serpents got lumped together with a leviathan, the biblical sea monster, and even the big fish that gave Jonah a 3-day underwater roller coaster ride. Across cultures, the dragon's resume was getting wilder by the minute. So, thus far we've got dragons as creators, dragons as protectors, and now dragons as the embodiment of pure evil. Enter our next character, Isidore of Seville. This 7th century archbishop and scholar decided to write the ancient world's version of Wikipedia with his etymologies. And naturally, he had some thoughts on dragons. According to Isidore, dragons were basically super serpents, the largest animal on Earth, often hailing from exotic places like Ethiopia and India. Forget venomous bites. Isidore said these bad boys would just whip you into oblivion with their tails. While the Byzantine world kept their dragons looking like a classic serpent, the medieval West decided to get creative. Cat heads, dragon snouts, bat wings, all of them. The more bizarre, the better. This shape-shifting madness only solidified the dragon's association with the sneaky devil. Romanesque art shows dragons attacking knights, saints, and sadly, fluffy little lambs. And where better to remind the faithful of the horrors of hell that etched in stone on the very churches they worshipped in? Capitals, corbels, you name it. They were basically medieval carved scare tactics. Dragons, apes, mermaids, which were considered evil just like Ariel from Disney should be. The whole demonic gang was there to encourage good behavior. And for the plethora of illiterate peasants, I'm sure it was effective. Think of it as medieval guilt tripping enforced by the architecture around them. And thanks to the burgeoning popularity of pilgrimages to Rome and Spain, these terrifying images went viral all across Europe. Then the 13th century rolled around, and suddenly there was a newfound interest in reality. How boring. During the Renaissance, Aristotle's work was becoming popular again thanks to the Arabs. Arabic treatises on optics were all the rage, and even dragon art started to get a little more realistic. Gothic dragons looked less like they came from scary nightmares and more like actual animals. Although grumpier, they had bat-like wings, proper spines, and even four-legged versions based on lizards and crocodiles. They started to look like something that could actually exist. Now let's talk about bestiaries, those medieval books of beasts. Less about actual zoology and more about Christian allegory. So as a bird's seductive song might symbolize the dangers of lust, the dragon was pretty consistent with bad news. Their tails were deadlier than their teeth, and they could even take down elephants. But for some reason, they were terrified of shadows of certain trees because it represented Christian salvation. Go figure. So dragons were bad, saints were good. Naturally, the next step was epic showdowns. We've got the infamous Saint Patrick, who allegedly drove serpents out of Ireland like a sainted version of Dale Gribble. Other heroes include Saint Hilarion, who just fire blasted a dragon, and Saint Marcellus, who basically told a dragon to politely leave Paris. But the real rock stars of dragon slaying were the ones with the dramatic narratives, often found in the wild popular Golden Legend. Take Saint Margaret of Antioch. This poor woman refused to marry some governor and got thrown in jail. Then a huge and terrifying dragon with multicolored skin showed up and swallowed her whole. But Margaret, being a saint and all, had a crucifix. And in what has to be one of the most metal moments in history, she used that crucifix to cut her way through and burst out of the dragon's stomach like that alien from the movie Alien. Then there's Saint Martha of Bethany, who dealt with a local dragon in France called the Tarasca. Her method? Sprinkle it with holy water, then let the angry villagers finish it off with spears and stones. It was a perfect way of outsourcing your dragon slaying. Of course, no history of medieval dragons is complete without knights in shining armor. Beowulf fought a treasure-guarding dragon. Sir Lancelot took on dragons in the King Arthur legend. But the ultimate knight versus dragon story? That's St. George, a Roman soldier who heard about a Libyan city that was regularly feeding its own citizens to a dragon. When the king's daughter was on the menu, George stepped in, wounded the beast, then made a deal with the king. Convert to Christianity, and he'll finish the job. They agreed, and off went the dragon's head. This might be the most epic moment in the history of missionary work. George remained devout too. He was later martyred for his faith, becoming the poster boy for medieval chivalry. But here's the thing, history fans. As time marched on, the demonic baggage started to fade. The strange, anomalous, and magical aspects of the dragon began to take center stage. And that, my friends, is why today, dragons aren't just symbols of evil. They're the awe-inspiring, fantastical creatures that fuel our imaginations. They fill our books and screens, and occasionally give us the urge to hoard shiny things. So, the next time you see a dragon in a movie or read about one in a book, remember, you're not just looking at a cool monster. You're looking at thousands of years of human history, belief, and our enduring fascination with the terrifyingly awesome.